first of all, where would one find Meteor news if one was looking for it? I go through this every month. Write these down if you're remotely interested. First of all, the forums. These are really active. All the kind of bleeding edge Meteor topics, the future of Meteor, are being discussed there. Obviously, some people are slightly more outspoken than others, but the people in MDG often pop up and clarify stuff or give direction, and it's well worth reading if you really want to know if you want the first point of call to what's going on. The kind of potted summary will be presented on the Meteor official blog, so that's their avenue of kind of official information release. The best kind of summary of news within the Meteor community is thisweekinmeteor.com, which is Rishi Kumar, I think, who produces that, and it's really, really well written and it is extremely complete, so anything that's interesting will be in there. Creator.io is now has a bit more broader focus and a lot of spam, but all the important Meteor stories get posted on there. It's like the hacker news for reactive technology, reactive web technology, I suppose. I've also added voice.khedira.io. Those guys are posting with alarming frequency at the moment on really interesting stuff. That's Aaron Oda, who some of you will be aware of if you're interested in Meteor, if you've been in the Meteor community for a while, and the guys that work with him in Sri Lanka, who are just producing interesting stuff all the time. So it's worth looking at voice.khedira.io on a regular basis as well. History.md, again, if you're looking for what the most recent editions, History.md is where we've been looking for the past 2 years at what's coming next and what's just been released in Meteor. So it has the chronological history of features that are being added. The one caveat is that for version 1.3 that I'm going to talk about later, if you want to look at what's next, it's not actually on the master branch at the moment. You've got to go to the 1.3 release branch to find out what's coming next. So all you've got on History.md at the moment is what the current release gives you. But if you're looking for what's going to come up in the next official release, generally speaking, that's the best place to find it. Well, that's the place to find it. And there's some fascinating nuggets in there. So as Alan alluded to, you are all people and you like Meteor, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So given those two facts, you should generate news and tell us about the news you've generated. We'd be fascinated to hear about it. You can give a lightning talk, you can give a long talk, you can at least get a mention in the Meteor news if you've done something that's worthy of a mention. So please come and speak to us, or gitter.im, Meteor London next. We will put that up later probably as well. That's the kind of chat client on which you can find us at almost all times and tell us about interesting things you want to talk about. So news, I'll be kind of as brief as possible, but there's so much that's going on at the moment that apologies if I waffle a bit. MDG, lots to talk about from the official Meteor development group. The Meteor guide is the easiest thing to talk about because it's kind of well contained and relevant to what's out now, the current release 1.2.1. These are opinionated instructions. So this is a guide written by Sashko from MDG which gives a kind of potted summary of best practice for your Meteor app from top to bottom, assuming you're writing it 1.2.1. And it's really well written. It's really well researched. Obviously, Sashko is responsible for a lot of the code, so he knows how it all works extremely well. And it's also been written in consultation with lots of experienced Meteor devs. So everybody should read it. If you're not an experienced Meteor developer, it's the best place to learn. It's much better than the old way before the guide came out. I think Sashko had to fight quite hard to get the time to release this. But it's much better than the previous system where there was this kind of blogosphere which had some really interesting posts, some less well-written posts, and just aggregating it all was quite tough. You've got best practice in one place now. So certainly if you're not that experienced, you should read it. If you are that experienced, you should still read it, because my experience is you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, that's a good way of doing stuff, and you think maybe I should learn something from that. So yeah, it's invaluable. It covers the entire process pretty much. And yeah, like I say, it's got lots of input from people that have got production Meteor apps, so this is kind of tried and tested stuff. Version 1.3, so this is the next version. There's vague indication that might come at the end of February, but there's no guarantee of that at all. The big change in this version is support for modules. So Meteor in its current and all previous versions has this kind of it makes a large bundle for client and server, which is based on the directory structure, the order it adds things. This is a fairly significant change because it allows you to require stuff as one would in Node, for example. So load order problems which have plagued some people in Meteor will be relatively easily resolved, we assume, if provided the kind of the dependencies, the build tool can manage the dependencies correctly. You can import NPM modules directly, including on the client, which is great. It also has further ES 2015 support, which already sounds like it's kind of long in the tooth, it being 2016. But generators are in there, and also we've got some ES 2016 features, async and await, which is really good for kind of managing asynchronous code. So pretty much all of ES 2015 is now going to be available in Meteor. One thing it doesn't have is incremental loading, which is coming, and it's a massive feature that loads of people want, so you don't have to load your entire code base for the first page that a client looks at. But this is obviously a fairly important step towards that, and so, as I understand it, Sashko said on a podcast that they wanted to release this first as a version because there's loads of stuff people can use in this, even though it's just one step towards incremental, like lazy loading. So that's all coming. So this is really exciting. It will be a big change in a lot of respects, but it's a change that is necessary because people moan about how the Meteor bundler can't do stuff that Webpack can, for example. And then the big news and the most uncertain thing is Reactive GraphQL. So to take like a high-level view, Meteor started with this amazing, ambitious desire to be a full-stack platform, which allowed you to do incredibly powerful things really quickly, but at the same time was not too opinionated on how you did them. So they've repeatedly described it as a series of packages, and if you don't want to use all the packages, you don't use all the packages. And that loads of us, all of us have either given or at least seen really impressive demos where people have built something with live data that looks really cool and like is a genuine web app in minutes, 5-10 minutes, and that's Meteor's selling point. From the beginning, though, people have been concerned about some of the core aspects of that, like, for example, the choice of database. Loads of people don't like MongoDB. And then increasingly, obviously, React now, Meteor built their own view layer called Blaze, and a lot of people are switching to React, and I think there's just an acceptance that even though a lot of people, myself included, I think all of us at TableFlip really like Blaze, there's no way MDG in terms of support and incremental improvement are going to be able to compete with Facebook, so a lot of people are going to switch to React, and that's not going to reverse. Then people start talking about, well, if I'm not using Blaze, maybe I shouldn't be using Tracker, and I should be using RxJS. And people, like I say, don't sometimes like the build tool, and they'd rather use Webpack. And so it feels like for the past 6 months, maybe we've been kind of tiptoeing towards a point where people are asking themselves, what is Meteor? Why am I using Meteor if I don't like lots of the components? And I think this is like a potted summary of what lots of people have been talking about on blogs and podcasts and so on, but the kernel of what Meteor is for a lot of people, sorry if I'm waffling, I'll be brief as I can. The kernel of what Meteor is, are packages which provide server-aware components that are really powerful, like editable text or autoform or tabular tables. So the component is something you can drop into your view layer, and it's server-aware. It can define its own data requirement. You can configure it to define rules for writing to the database, and so on. And using that sort of technology, which is much more sophisticated. I mean, you can, with autocomplete and Insecure, you can do something that looks amazing really quickly, but that's not practical at all. You could never deploy that. Whereas these sorts of packages allow you to plug and play something that you could genuinely deploy to a production site really quickly, and in genuinely still a fraction of the time that you could do using any other platform. So I think that's like Meteor's, like that's still its USP. The problem with it is that if people don't like Blaze, which those packages are tied to, people don't like the choice of database, then they're going to be unenthusiastic about using those packages anyway. Reactive GraphQL, and I'm really kind of out on a limb here because I've never used GraphQL. Well, not that you can use GraphQL, I've never used Relay. I understand it's pretty complicated, but this is Facebook's specification for how your components can define their own data requirement and communicate it to a server. Meteor, as I understand it, as I'm assuming, are planning to build a layer on top of that, which will allow you to plug Relay into their version of Relay or whatever into a backend, which out of the box could be MongoDB or SQL or a REST API, and achieve reactive data on the client in Angular or React or Blaze or whatever view layer you want to use. So basically, this is generalizing the idea of live data in a way which is going to be hopefully future-proof. And I think that's a huge thing. Number one, for people that are using Meteor at the moment and are worried about the sustainability of the technologies, some of the technologies that it's reliant on at the moment. And number two, for new people coming to the platform, because if you've already built an app in whatever technology and it's got a REST API, the idea of being able to plug into that and get reactive data and use Meteor, which is really fast to develop, is very, very exciting. So I can totally understand why Meteor are going to pour a lot of their attention into this, because I think it solves a lot of the potential problems or questions that people have at the moment, but we have no visibility on exactly what it'll do, how easy it'll be to use, because it's definitely going to be there's going to be more boilerplate than there is at the moment in a Meteor app, when it's going to come, anything like that. So, I thought the next slide was discuss, but discuss is the key thing on that.
I think there's this living document that they're encouraging people to contribute to.
There's a living document that they're encouraging people to contribute to.
They really do. Proposed it as an idea, and this is the direction I had to go. But now is the time, if you have fears or praise, now is the time to wade in.
Make your voice heard, people. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, but yeah, anybody with concerns or anything, then yeah, make it heard, because yeah, you could influence the future of the platform, which is quite exciting. Anyway, we've moved on to Khedira. They've just announced something called Mantra, which is a specification really for how to build on Meteor to build a full app. The specification is kind of being put together and it's online at the moment. The idea, and I'm only going to talk about ideas because it isn't really anything at the moment, is that it's well specified. So again, it's much more opinionated than the historical Meteor stuff. It's highly maintainable via because it's opinionated, you can have stuff like linters and much more easily automated testing. It's future-proof. I'm not quite sure how that's achieved, and I'm not sure it's one word either, but there we are. There's already, they're putting a tutorial online, which actually is just an ES 2015 tutorial at the moment, but they're going to add to that with stuff that's Mantra specific. So again, this is pretty interesting, and I think a lot of people will pay attention to it because Khedira, those guys put out so much really useful stuff that people use all the time. Now you can discuss. Not now, over burritos. So the community news, two interesting things which are coming up. First of all, JSConf Budapest. There's loads of JavaScript conferences. Obviously, this is not Meteor specific, but this is one which is non-profit. It's by the community, for the community. It's in a really awesome place. If you've not been to Budapest, it's a great city. It's great value. The price of a single ticket is like the price you'd get half a day and a cup of coffee at some conferences in like London or San Francisco. And it gets you breakfast and lunch 2 days, dinner 1 day, 2 evening events, and 2 days worth of talks. There's a chance to sponsor diversity, so you can contribute towards a ticket for somebody from an underrepresented group to get a free ticket. And we also have a coupon code for a significant discount. So if you're interested, please take a photo or note that down or ask us at the end. The other event that I want to mention is Meteor and FlipFlops, which is a 2-day workshop with lectures, assignments, projects. Again, it's in a great place, Las Palmas, where the weather, I would imagine, at the end of February will be better than it is here. You can look at the website, which is there, or Matt Check, who is organising it, is here somewhere. So he's the best. There he is. He's the best person to speak to about it. And I believe there are 2 spaces still available. But that looks awesome as well. So if you have time in February, check it out. And I think that's it. So the only other question is, what's your news? Please let us know if there's anything you'd like us to mention or talk about. Get in touch. Again, that's where we are. That's the GitHub repo. The Gitter repo is exactly the same. That's all. Thank you.